Happy Tuesday and welcome to today's training. My name is Jeffrey Palermo and I'm a chief architect at ClearMeasure. We're going to jump right in. Today we are talking about optimizing the team. So let me kind of set the stage for you. A high-performing team, we all want that. It doesn't just come into existence by chance. Uh, the concept of order does not emerge from chaos. Actually, it's just the opposite. Everything is kind of in a constant state of decline without maintenance. And you and your software leaders have to create order and guard against entropy. Um, just as God created you in his image, you have the ability to create. And this training is about creating and maintaining a highly effective software team. So that's what we're going to talk about. And if you're joining us for the first time, ClearMeasure is a full service software architecture company, an engineering firm serving companies that are using .NET and Azure. We build mission critical software. We rescue failing and troubled projects, always empowering software delivery with a proven approach. And even though software projects can be hard, yours doesn't have to be. And we'll have a few things to follow up on a little bit later. But this particular training is number 5 in the 5-part series of webinar training on the 5 pillars. And so if you haven't seen the first 5, please go look in our resource center on clearmeasure.com and you can find a full training series and recordings there. So the 5 pillars, first, we want to create clarity in what we're doing. Then we want to establish quality. That's an engineering must. Then as we deploy software into environments and into production, we want to achieve stability. And then with that foundation of quality and stability, we want to ratchet up our speed. And then as a cycle back through, we want to constantly iterate and optimize the team and optimize the team's performance. So that's kind of where we are. The agenda for today, we're going to talk about how to assess our current team, where we are now, strengths and weaknesses, how's it going? We're going to talk about the the general process of building a high performing team when it comes to custom software and how we move through the time the time honored process of forming, storming, norming, and performing, which is not just specific to software, but of course in our case, um, we have some techie things going on. Then we're going to talk about how to preserve the momentum that we've gained by improvements and how to strengthen the software team members that we have on our team. All right. If you do not have a copy of the 5 pillars leadership for effective custom software, then use the link, use the QR code here, snap a screenshot, pull out your phone and and use the camera on this QR code. You can get hardcover, softcover, audible.com for audiobook and Kindle. You can get those online, go to amazon.com. But if you just ask us, then we'd love to give you a free electronic copy of the book. We really do believe that every person involved in software projects would benefit from this. It's an easy read, but it's kind of the foundation of what we're talking about here. So, and if you want a shortcut because you're live in this training, then you can use the chat and request it there as well. And all of the links are in the chat. Please use the Q&A window to submit questions as you have them, and I'll stop from time to time and of course have a Q&A session at the end of the training today. All right. After this training is over, the very next step that I'd like you to do is to register for our summer in-person boot camp training. And that is in Austin, Texas. And you have a few options. It's the full package is 3 days. The first 2 days is advanced .NET engineer training. And the third day is advanced .NET architect training. And so architect meaning you supervise a group of programmers. You are the team lead. You are the lead engineer. Your title could be software engineering manager if you function as the lead of developers and you're also in the code and you're also a programmer. All of this training is for programmers. But the first 2 days is specifically for engineers and engineering practices. And then the third is leadership for those architects and team leads. And we have discounts if you do both of them and do the full package. So use that QR code immediately after this training. Just go and sign up, and we are really, really excited to ramp up our training around this. We've done training for many, many years, boot camp style, immersive, on the job training, where it's not just lecture style. You are in a software team, and I am your customer. I'm also your coach and your teacher. And yes, I am the instructor for this training, for both of these back to back. And it is completely immersive, and everybody who's ever been in these trainings before have said that it has had a huge impact on how they do work, and some have even said it's the best training they've ever had in their career. And we certainly love those positive reviews, but we're excited about this. We're just opening it up, and so after this, go sign up and tell your coworkers and colleagues. Okay, so let's jump in. Assessing your team. Just by being a part of this particular training, I kind of know that you likely already have a software team. Chances are that something about your team is not as it should be, and maybe you'd like the team to move faster. Maybe the software team needs to produce builds and software that uh, works more reliably on a day-to-day basis. Or maybe you need higher quality work so that the defect rate is lower. And for some of you, perhaps you need a very large and expensive software organization to be able to ship some large-scale software at some rate. It's beneficial to see your starting point with clarity. And so here's some questions to ask yourself to identify areas that might need some leadership focus. And just feel free to take notes. So here's some questions. First, is the purpose of the software team and the system written down and fully understood by everybody involved? Or number two, does your software team produce a regular executive summary or status report that includes a scorecard with measures that you understand? And three, are you happy with the quality of your software? Meaning, is your system free from bugs or free from bad bugs? Number four, do production bugs get repaired fast so as not to impact the end user experience? Number five, is your system software architecture documented in written form of some kind? Does everybody have a shared understanding of the current system's shape? Or number six, do you have insights into what features or changes are tested and ready for production deployment at any point in time? And number seven, are you made aware of the root issue when a problem is found in production that affects business operations, one of those disruptive issues? All right. Ask yourself those questions, and these are subjective, but just take your own notes. All right. So let's look at the production environment conceptually. Even without looking at reports or data, think to yourself, does the production environment ever display any bad behaviors like sluggishness or outages or offline error messages, frozen screens, bugs, abnormal behavior? That's how to assess your production environment. You want to kind of look for those things. And even if you don't have good data, you kind of have a good sense if some of those are big issues for you. And also, it's useful to consider overall. Think about these things, other kind of questions to ask. Do you release software to production at least weekly or at a quick cadence for whatever your organization moves at? Are you happy with how fast your team is delivering? That is, are new features getting delivered at the pace that you need them to be delivered? And again, this is subjective. Also ask, does it seem that the team spends more time fixing problems than delivering new functionality? That may indicate some quality problems. Also, you can ask, can you rely on the team to work according to company level quarterly objectives? Well, it's hard to estimate big things. Companies tend to have quarterly objectives, and we need to support them. So think, Does a company support quarterly objectives and say, hey, we need to get this accomplished in the software? And do we have the capability to actually deliver? Or is it frequent that we have to tell our business partners, yeah, we're not going to be able to get that done, or surprise, it's not ready yet. You have to tell the market, tell the investors, tell the customers that it's not ready yet. Does that typically happen? Yes or no? And even though you might not have, and many of you don't have a data-driven answer to some of these introspective questions, you are a leader. Some of you on this call are software executives, some are team leads. You have just you have experience. You have good business and organizational instincts, and your intuition around each of these questions is probably at least 80% accurate, I would think. Your gut feel is pretty good. You've been doing this for a while. So, um, let's move into building a high performing team. Um, we're gonna. It's not really a question of do we need or do we want a high performing team. Everybody wants one. Man, the definition of how high performing, that might, uh, you know, we might have a continuum on that, but um, a high performing team should work well. And there's, some indicators that we can look for that a team might need some improvement. Now, we can look at engineering practices. While there are some of those practices that are proven to correlate to high performance, that's not the first step on this journey. The first step is to know where your current team is and then move them through the process to high performance. But way back in the 1960s, there was a guy named Bruce Tuckman, and he was a psychological researcher for the Naval Medical Research Institute, and he published a paper called Developmental Sequence in Small Groups. And the article detailed a process that many business schools and management courses use to this day and use and teach. And the process is forming, storming, norming, and then performing. And Mr. Tuckman, he concludes that there is a natural sequence of team development for small groups. And whether you monitor it or not, this sequence kind of tends to happen. Some of the teams, they may take longer in each of the phases, but the sequence of phases, it happens. It always happens. And the last stage, performing, it's not actually guaranteed. Some teams fall into the category of just kind of staying around norming and kind of struggle to get to the performing stage. But most software teams can be classified as a small group, and then, this research definitely applies. So let's go into forming. If new team members join the software team, you hire somebody, you have to replace somebody, then forming has to occur. Even if the team's long tenured, the staff, it changes from time to time, and that thrusts it back into the forming stage. And the skills of new team members, they need to be tested, they need to be known, new relationship connections need to form, dependency relationships between team members and leaders have to be confirmed and shifted and created. And the new people who've joined have to be oriented with the long established standards that other people are familiar with, so that they can take on the required roles. And in the stage of forming, team members are going to rely heavily on authority figures, because they're being kind of told how to shift and how to change. This stage is going to also happen again whenever a team member joins or leaves the team, every time, leaving the team as well. The network across expectations in the team, it shifts whenever a staff member changes. And as the leader, this stage will repeat itself when you design and prune the team to make it stronger. As business objectives and constraints change, you're going to need to change the team to make it suitable for the maybe shifting business climates of the following year. And this isn't something that's a bad thing. It's not to be feared. It's normal. Pruned plants in the garden grow stronger after the pruning. You have multiple teams, you may need to move people around. You need to change people's jobs. You need to change something, okay? All right, storming is the next stage. So that's right after forming, and storming is it's natural for in this stage for some interpersonal issues to arise, and you can't really prevent this, but as problems are settled, the team can move on because you've actually worked through them. And what's important is not to let the team get stuck on any of these issues. In software teams, there can be sometimes a struggle for seniority. As design decisions, architectural decisions are made, some might want the ability to make decisions based on tenure because they've been around longer, um, and been with the company a long time, maybe. Or maybe some have just a much stronger personality, or strength of personality. And so um, instead of this, demonstrating competence is how design decisions should be made. And so, as a leader, you should really step in to ensure that competence is driving team organization rather than assertiveness. Some software leaders conflate friendliness, for example, with competence. You could have somebody who's very, very friendly. That's not the same as the continuum of competence in various areas. So ensure that your team emerges from storms organized by competence in various measures. And not one person is going to be competent and highly competent in every single thing. You're always going to have a web, and some people are going to be better at some things than others, but that's why you storm and kind of figure it out. But you're going to go through storming. So after storming, your team can move on to implementing standard processes like those mentioned previously. But team members in this stage settle into their new or altered roles, and you can start to measure your team's progress. And this is the stage where you have to overcome, or where you already have at this point overcome interpersonal issues in norming team members. They have already built trust, they know each other, and they've turned their attention to working with each other instead of getting to know each other. And at this point, if you're still struggling with personality issues, then let's not tell ourselves that the team is norming. Let's recognize reality that we're maybe still in storming. So focus on that. Focus on finishing each stage so that you can move forward to the next. And then as your team ramps up, you want to start measuring right away. Implement the standard work stream without taking shortcuts. When you start tracking work as it moves through stages, you can ensure that each stage of work has a clear assignment to one or a few people. So it's clear who's doing what. And then you can align the communication through direct channels between people rather than getting a lot of people together in meetings. You want to have individuals working with individuals, not just constantly scheduling meetings. And this is the stage where you kind of break the industry average, which unfortunately, the industry average is a third of team time is spent in meetings. So as you go through norming, you want to make sure that you are helping the industry average shrink time in meetings and not being one of the teams that is increasing that average. All right. So you want to aggressively, and I really recommend aggressively avoiding meetings in favor of just process tuning. And you can know that you've accomplished the norming stage when you no longer have to reinforce the workflow. It just happens. People are just working together. And regardless of the pace that you achieve at this point, all the team members know what to do, and they require less supervision to choose the right work for the day. All right, the last stage, performing. You are going to know that your team is in the performing stage when they analyze the numbers on the scorecard on their own and get creative with process improvements that improve the numbers. The team discussions, they start centering around increasing quality and allocating time to recovering from production issues quicker and changing how they do that. And then as the leader, you can be the coach, not the supervisor. While but back when you're in the forming stage, team members they kind of need a good deal of support from you as the leader. So you very much are the supervisor. But now in the performing stage, your team needs less support for regular daily work. And rather than close supervision, instead they come up with new ideas and implement them, maybe even without asking, which which is also pretty impressive. All right, so why it matters. You've got to go through these stages. Remember, when the team changes, it has to be formed again. You just got to go through this process again. If you ignore that, then just expect to have these stages happen organically as they happen, but they're going to happen. Whether or not you choose to manage and facilitate them, they're going to happen. All right, moving on, preserving momentum. In business and organization in general, it it typically takes a lot of leadership effort to get momentum. Consider the analogy of riding a bicycle. It takes more effort to start from a standstill than to just continue cruising, gaining momentum. Uh, with your As you gain more momentum with your team, um, it takes less effort to get it going. But to start, you're going to push a lot of effort. Once your team is moving, then you can typically sustain that momentum with less leadership effort. But don't make the mistake of just setting it on autopilot. Preserving momentum will always take some leadership effort. And as your team delivers software and works through continuous, remember, one at a time, single piece process. In the last training, we harped on this single piece process. Don't let your attention drift from the regular operational management and overseeing that. And whether you oversee the team directly or if you have several management layers in the middle, make sure that the normal management cadences are in place. All right. Um, I'll suggest a few. Weekly, every week, executive management, they really should receive a report. And it can be just a few words or just a few numbers on a scorecard, but you want to include an analysis of the numbers that maybe aren't at the desired level so that the executive leadership can evaluate that the proper next steps are actually already being taken to improve, instead of seeing some numbers that aren't good and then coming and peppering you with questions. If your team is not producing a scorecard at all, back up in the process to the storming phase. You need scorecard numbers as a part of any kind of status report, and you want to patch that gap. If none of your teams have ever had a scorecard, then you can often take a model from other non-software teams in the company. Scorecards with metrics, they really are the language of every department in business. There's no magic scorecard for software teams, but you should ensure that you have at least one number for each priority. And if you need help jump starting your first software team scorecard, get some help or advice. Don't settle for the software department being the one department in the company that isn't tracked with metrics. And if you need a scorecard template, you can use ours. Just go to clearmeasure.com and you can request the template. And I believe that Chloe is assisting me in the chat and she'll put a link to the scorecard there as well. All right. Now let's talk about people, team players, and why it matters. Really, in everything, the team with the best players wins the game. And sometimes there's innate advantages, but the best players are going to be the best trained players, the best equipped players, the best coached players, and the players working with the best strategy and game plan. So you want your team to have the best players. And if you're going to be the best leader, then you are going to create the best players. If you're expanding your software team, then invariably you're looking for new A players. You've heard that term, A players. If your company has to downsize, you want to preserve your best engineers. Um, and if you still need to gain some skills organizationally, then you want to train some of your engineers. If you've maybe unfortunately lost confidence in a team member, you want to prune the team to replace an engineer. And note, I'm saying engineer as a generic term for any role on the software team, um, but just a team member. If it's been a while since you've personally written code, then some managers feel a little bit unsure about the competence level or how to assess the competence level of team members who are writing code. Sometimes strength of personality or assertiveness, and maybe even congeniality, friendliness can all cloud the understanding of a team member's contribution and strengths. And so be wary of these sometimes confusing factors and ensure that the decisions are made with competence in mind, and really not any other factor. If you allow other factors to influence the decision of your team makeup, then you're going to be left with a team that's not as competent, not as capable as it could be. And sports teams, they are really a highly visible examples of organizational dynamics and just how these things go, which realities make a difference. And in sports, because there's clear winners and losers, the tactics, they kind of strongly correlate with success versus failure. That's just what it is, win or lose. Professional sports tend to have clear seasons and they have a break. And so in this seasonal nature, coaches and managers of the sports teams, they intentionally do some hiring and firing. The owners of sports teams do some hiring and firing of coaches. And in software teams, this corresponds to recruiting and pruning. The leaders intentionally design their teams for the best performance in the season ahead. And effective leaders recruit and hire new team members with certain expectations. They recognize team members who haven't met expectations in the past as well. And they also align players with coaching and training programs to unleash the highest capability in whoever is hired. The software engineer market, it's kind of been challenging over the years in recruiting because of some decades long growth in demand for the software engineering skill set. And in this long era where demand for software engineers really has outstripped supply, some managers have begun to settle for less than A players. And that doesn't mean a certain person with more or less experience, because if you haven't trained your team in years, well, don't expect to have A players because you haven't invested in them. But a team that doesn't have the best players on the field is not going to win. And so in the game of software, there's no rival software team, but after assessing your team, you're going to have a pretty good sense of whether the team is winning the game of software or not. So how do we know if all of our positions are staffed with A players? Well, one way is through demonstration and practice of the fundamentals. In football, blocking and tackling and throwing and catching and running, these are all they're all fundamentals of the game of football. And so we need to find the correlations with software engineering. Working well with other teammates is pretty fundamental. And these fundamentals are you have to practice them continually. Um, Writing tests, build scripts, refactoring, design patterns, uh, drawing design. There's so many fundamental practices that everyone needs to be very, very good at. And you need to continually do and monitor and practice. If we switch to a different analogy, maybe a musician, the same is going to hold true. A professional musician plays and practices the musical instrument even when not at a paid gig. The instrument, you can see, is an extension of his body, and he really kind of has a lot of inner joy in using it, even while off the clock. Um, and think about this. Think about a musician who never played his instrument unless he was literally on stage being paid to be a band member. Really wouldn't be a very good musician, right? Same holds true with software. Even when not on the clock, typically A players, you're going to find them thinking about software. They have a love of the field of software. They're practicing things, they're self-training, they're listening to software-related speeches or news or media or keeping up with the industry. They find other software professionals outside the company to just talk shop with. The software A players love to see the report card, love to see the scorecard filled with conceptual A's, good numbers. The less than A players sometimes don't want to be graded because, well, maybe they intuitively know that the numbers aren't going to be good. It's not going to be an A on the scorecard, and sometimes there's no clarity in how to get the numbers where they should be, how to either improve quality or improve production stability or improve the rate of delivery. And so, as you implement a scorecard-based status report, look for the team members who jump on board and are optimizing the numbers versus maybe some other team members who resist even the concept of measuring in the first place. The A players, they might have the tendency to even contribute to what are the best metrics to measure and ways to convey that measurement to management, how to analyze those metrics. Um, but you want to look out for other team members who resist even that notion of measurement. And maybe they claim that, oh, software is different and it can't be measured. Or maybe they might argue that measuring will produce the wrong outcomes and cause people to game the system. So without measuring, ultimately, executive management is measuring the technology group. The CFO is measuring the cost of the software group and how much is being delivered and return on investment. So measurement's always happening. So it can't just be optional. But maybe sometimes a difficult topic. You've had to let somebody go, or you're thinking, I need to replace somebody. Well, after you do that, when you know your pruning and then recruiting and maybe some replacement are done, turn your attention to continually growing your team, meaning improving your team, training your team. Once you're confident that you have your team that are full of just innate A players and people who have the capability to be A players and the drive and motivation, um, grow them, train them. They can take on new responsibilities at a very fast rate. They can learn new skills at a very fast rate. Take advantage of that. Give them new challenges, promote them, train them, give them the best equipment, the best tools, and the best coworkers. A players tend to want to work with other A players, and they tend to attract other A players. And this is another form of organizational momentum that requires some leadership effort to establish, but it requires less effort to maintain once it is established. It's important to remember, again, like what's on the screen, the team with the best players wins the game. And the team with the best coach makes great players. All right, so let's review where we are with these five concepts. Um, Optimizing the team is the fifth of the five pillars, and you'll really only get benefit from it after implementing the previous four, like we mentioned. If you believe that any of the previous pillars need to be reinforced, or if your team has maybe changed, then please go back and review, re-implement, and reinforce the previous pillars, and then you'll be able to continue optimizing the team and your team's performance. Okay. Again, if you don't have the book, if you're just joining us and you haven't been in this training series from the beginning, please get the book. We'd love to send you a free electronic copy. And this is how to get it. All right. And the links are in the chat as well. And then sign up for the July Advanced.net bootcamp, both of them preferably, or just one or the other. It's your choice, but you get a really good price break on both of them. So navigate there to our website. Okay, I'll leave this slide up and I'll go over to the um, Q&A window and see what questions that we have. Okay, here, I tend to get this question. Okay, so here's the question. I'm just an engineer on the team and my supervisor doesn't understand these concepts. How can I help them learn? So I can't speak to the individual situation, but um, you know the personalities, so you'll have to judge it for yourself. But refer your team lead, supervisor, manager, refer them to the training, refer them to the book, refer them to the online um, training course that we do have available. If they can go through this and kind of understand these concepts, then it'll help give you a language to talk with your team, and maybe you could kind of drive improvement of your team from the inside. But that is a good question, and and that would be my best advice. Get them the book. Hey, maybe even buy a hardcover and put it on their desk. That'd be great. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions that I haven't answered yet. I took some of the questions and kind of wove them in to the slides as we go. So let's see here. All right, answered that one, answered that one. Okay, I got through all the questions. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with me in this training series, 5 out of 5. Um, Look out for the other training series, but we did this virtual training series of 5 sessions, and so now to continue, um, I hope to see everyone in Austin, Texas, and bring some members of your team. If you have a large organization and you need a different date than the one we have published, we are happy to schedule these trainings um, in other cities in the city where your team is, and we can fill up a class just with your team if you'd like, and we can do that. But thank you so much. I will hang around for a little bit if anyone has any very specific questions for your organization. I'd be happy to do that. Um, if it's not, even if it's not a question about this particular training directly, if it's a question about anything software related, I'm at your disposal. So see if any questions come through, and I'll just hang out and see if anybody needs some help. A question came through from Lawrence. How much are the boot camps? I know we just put on some promotional pricing, so you just click on the website, and they'll be published on our website. And maybe Chloe, you can just put the promotional prices in chat so that they can see as well. But I don't exactly know what the promotional pricing was just published at, so I don't want to misspeak. All right. Oh, I just looked it up. Okay. You have to you have to get into register. So the engineer boot camp is 29.95, and the architect boot camp, the extra day is 14.95, but there's a bundle promotional pricing of 30, what was it? 37. I'm pretty sure it was 33,007 something for both. So bundling them together is a huge price break. But you're right, the pricing's actually not on that webpage just yet. I think that needs to be fixed. But yeah, I just looked it up. I just looked it up in the back end. So if you were to go to both, it'd be 37.50 or 37 something for both, but 29.95 for the engineer boot camp, and then by itself, and then 14.95 by itself for the advanced .NET architect boot camp day. And check back very soon, because there will be a link on the website to purchase, but just send us an email, use the contact us form if you know that you want to come and how many people that you want to send. and we'll get you registered. All right. Here's a question that came through. Do you have any rough guide to what percentage of time we should allocate to team improvement and maintenance? For example, I read once that 25% of each sprint should be allocated to ongoing maintenance. Oh, technical debt. Okay. So there's two concepts here. One is how much should be allocated to maintenance of the software itself, and then how much should be allocated to training for people. Um, that's a good question. I don't think that um, I don't think that there's a hard and fast number, but um, every every industry, regardless of what job you have, if there's not 40 hours of training of some type just over the course of a year, then you have to ask yourself, okay, are we doing training? And there's some that say, okay, the minimum that we're going to do on an annual basis is 18 hours of training. And that means like structured training, classroom training, could be online training. Um, Now we recognize that software engineers, good software engineers are constantly training, constantly looking at videos online, constantly practicing. So you want to have a habit of continuous learning. But instead of just looking at what percent time and going to a quota, instead, I think of it as skills. Um, does every team member have the fundamental skills? Does every team member know how to do feature branching pull requests, work in a continuous integration environment? Does every team member know how to build software using test-driven development? Does every team member have the dialogue language of design patterns? Does every team member know how to draw basic design diagrams in order to communicate ideas of how a particular feature of the software should be put together? And if there is a skill missing, then we need to do that training. So it's not about just filling in the hours with something. It's about identifying the necessary skills and training that person on those skills. So if you're hiring a younger person who's literally never written an automated test before, okay, we need to train that engineer in how to write an automated test. That's a skill. And a lot of these times it doesn't take a long that doesn't take a long time. It can be supplemented with an online video demonstration and then maybe some even peer coaching. A lot of times for one-off skills, you're not sending somebody to a class, but you're getting somebody else on the team that has that skill to demonstrate it where they can kind of do the waitress model, which is see one, do one, teach one, where you see somebody else perform a skill, then you do the skill while that experienced person watches. And now the third step is now that you know how to do it, you can be the coach for yet another person. I hope that helps. On the technical debt side, um, I think the answer for technical debt is every single feature, every single issue that you move across your work tracking board, um, if it causes a certain area of the software to have to be changed and there is identified technical debt in that area of the software, then the definition of done for that particular feature is doing some maintenance or doing some refactoring on that part of the software so that we fix it, so that we leave that section of the software better than than where it was before. And some software that's been around a long time, maybe making it better isn't completely changing the way it's designed because that would be more than refactoring. Maybe it's just um, chunking up a piece of the software, wrapping it in a better interface or an object with some better naming, a better interface, and sequestering that section of the software and spreading it up. Legacy software tends to be labeled legacy because it's hard to work with. You change some software or you change some code and something in a seemingly unrelated part of the system breaks. And nobody would guess that there's some connection between what you did and what part of the system broke. It's because parts of the system are accidentally and unnecessarily coupled together. So when you have to make a change, a really good improvement, a really good bit of maintenance on an older system that has these kind of symptoms is to find a way to take a section of it and really isolate it, and hide it behind a new interface or wrap it in a new class so that you kind of guarantee or you insulate it against other side effects in other part of the software. And that makes it more resilient to system change by limiting the number of tentacles that it uses. For example, if there's a global variable that's used and it needs to read the global variable, well, maybe let's change it instead of reading this global or shared scope variable. Maybe we change that variable into a parameter and we pass it in every time we call that section of code. That makes it more resilient. So those kinds of things can be maintenance, just like battleships in the Navy. They're around for many, many decades, and maybe we have an idea for a better design of the battleship, but it's the battleship that we have. So what maintenance do we do? Well, guess what? We we paint it and we repaint it and we do, some of the cosmetic things that we can do and we bolt on things, and that's just the reality. But they are improvements, and so we do them. Even if we think, man, at some point I want a new battleship. Man, at some point I want a new software system and I want to completely redesign big parts of it. Okay, but we still need to figure out what is a practical and possible improvement now. And that is the reduction of technical debt. That is good and useful maintenance. And so I advocate on um, on doing some maintenance with every feature. And when you change some code, leave it a little better than you found it. So hope that helps. Um, Follow on comment says metrics for that sort of complexity or reduced complexity would be useful. So cyclomatic complexity is actually a well-known industry standard. I do like that metric, is cyclomatic complexity, and that's one of the ones that are built into Visual Studio. You can just go and go in the menu item and calculate code metrics. And one ratio that I like just for code is, and when we assess software systems, we do a lot of inspections. Coming in, a client has a software team or a software system, and maybe they've had team turnover or a new software manager comes in or something's not going as well as they would like, and so they bring us in and say, hey, help us fix this situation, improve this situation. So one of the things we do to assess the software system, and again, we're coming in, we know nothing about this business, we know nothing about this piece of software, we're coming in totally cold. But one of the things we do is we calculate the code metrics, and then we take the cyclomatic complexity number for different Visual Studio projects, the different assemblies, and we divide it by the number of executable lines of code in that in that assembly. And so we get the ratio of cyclomatic complexity over lines of executable code, and that's able to point us to complex hotspots in the code where, again, we know nothing about the software, but we ask and we say, this area of the software system, is that kind of complicated? Do people kind of avoid making changes in that area? And they look at us with big eyes and they say, "How did you know?" So that's kind of a useful metric. Also, I do like the tool called Independ. It's Ndepend. That has a whole lot of code metrics. You can download a trial and try it out. But it will also identify hotspots of complexity in your existing software system. Um, and so you can kind of gauge which areas are prone to bugs. Bugs tend to exist in clusters and they tend to exist in complex code because we tend to change complex code with less than ideal confidence, and we tend to make mistakes when changing complex code. Not that we made the mistake, but that the design of the software kind of hides its actual behavior and its actual structure. So we make changes without a full understanding of all of the behavioral changes that we're actually implementing. But that's a good tool. It's called Independent. So hope that's helpful. All right. And Chloe did put my phone number and email address in the chat. So feel free to save that and call me or send me an email at any time. I really love helping teams move faster and deliver higher quality and just increase the level of confidence in delivering software. Just, I mean, it's kind of fun for me. So I enjoy doing this, but I think we tackled all the questions. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I hope to see every one of your names in our uh, in our training registration. Just use the contact us form on the website to say, "Hey, get me registered," and we'll get you registered. All right, fantastic. Well, thanks to everyone. Have a terrific Tuesday. Good to see everyone.